everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Entrepreneur's Inner Game podcast. I'm very, very pleased to introduce a very exciting guest today. Her name is Sharon Vornholt, and she's the owner of an innovative property solution in Louisville, Kentucky. She began investing in 1998, and today her passion is empowering and educating women who have an interest in real estate investing and in teaching other real estate investors how to succeed in this business. Sharon is best known as a marketing and branding expert, and for her expertise in probate investing. She's helped hundreds of people refine their brand and create customized marketing plans that work. She is also the creator of the Louisville Gals Real Estate blog, the popular podcast Let's Talk Real Estate Investing, and her signature course Probate Investing Simplified. Sharon, a very warm welcome to the Entrepreneur's Inner Game podcast. I'm really thrilled you can join us today.
Well, thank you, Nina. I'm excited to be here.
Now, as you know, we talk all things mindset on this podcast, and mindset is such a key part of success. And I'd love to know a little bit about your story and how you came to create the success that you have and the role mindset played in that for you.
Well, mindset was huge. So I was first in, and we're going back a long time now, almost 30 years. I had another business, a home inspection business that was in a male-dominated field, completely male-dominated. And I had to really adjust my mindset. I call it getting tunnel vision. And about 8 years into that business, I started investing in real estate, which is another very male-dominated business, even today. So I had to make a decision early on that I wouldn't let it bog me down, because I was talking to a male friend of mine, and he said, we were talking about this whole good old boys club. And he said, well, Sharon, we never treated you any differently. And I said, no, that's absolutely true. However, the door to the good old boys club was only just cracked. So I had to make a decision early on. Was I going to let that hold me back, or was I simply going to just look forward, decide what I was going to do, and be aware of what was going on in the fringes, but decide to chart my own course? So for the past 20 years, I have been trying to empower women to do the same thing. And it's been a very difficult journey, I have to tell you that, because it's only been the past 4 or 5 years that I've begun to see a shift. There are now women in real estate investing that have podcasts. There are mentors other than just a handful of us that have been around forever. But it's a constant conversation, because to give you an example, I was talking with a young investor. We think the younger generation has it easier. So she's 30-something. And we were talking about a conversation she had with a man who said, can you look at this deal and tell me if it's a good deal? Well, it would be like me saying, Nina, is it a good idea for me to buy this apartment building? He had no information. And she said, well, I simply need more information from you. And he said to her, well, that's okay. Have your husband call me. I never expected you to be the numbers person. Or the contractors say, listen, I really need to talk to your husband. It's still in 2020 the same way. So when I talk to investors, women, I say to them, it's your mindset. You have to fix your mindset, because apparently this is never going to change. Not even after 30 years, it's still the same.
What enabled you then to have the confidence to be able to push open that door in the boys club?
I think growing up, my dad was a general contractor. And one thing, he was this super smart person, Nina, that talked about space travel decades before space travel. They all thought he was a little wacky, to tell you the truth. But he used to always say to me as a child, understand that there are no barriers to you. Only the barriers that you create. You can do whatever you want. And I remember a specific time when we were children and a book came out, and people were saying, oh, you're not letting your child read that book. It was Catcher in the Rye. So what he said, my opinion is that children, you protect them to a point, and then you have to let them decide if they can read the book and understand the book, then they should be able to read the book. But he taught me, I think, I didn't know this until I got much, much older, but he opened that door for me. And I just never, I only saw barriers that I would put in front of me. I didn't choose to look at those barriers because I hate to say it, but they're still there today.
Wonderful. So you had that message right from the beginning that
But
actually you can
I
do whatever
didn't
you
know
want.
it though until I got much older. I didn't realize. And one day I went, wait a minute, I don't have to be defined by them.
Excellent. And that is a huge help, isn't it? Because if you're
Hmm.
hearing that from early on, then that
Hmm.
becomes your truth.
Hmm.
And yet other people have a different message, don't they? That,
Hmm.
play small, don't draw attention to yourself. It's a difficult world out there, all of these things,
Hmm.
which create help. Well, they create stories around those
Yes.
messages that they receive. So what would you say to, women, men who feel that they can't have what they want, that there are insurmountable barriers in their lives, in their business? They can only get so far, and their expectations, they keep their expectations low because they don't want to be disappointed. They don't
Hmm.
want to take risks in case it doesn't work out.
Hmm. I think you have to dream a bigger dream. I think you have to have the dream, but you also have to back it up with some sort of action. So, one thing that changed me greatly in my business was reading a book called The 12-Week Year. How many times have we had the best of intentions? So, it was The 12-Week Year by Brian Moran. Come January, now I'm a November planner. I'm already planning 2021 because that's just what I do. But you plan your year, and then suddenly you look up next October and you go, well, wait a minute. What happened to all those things I was going to do? And what I found out was it was a it's too much to bite off in one chunk. So when I read that book and it talked about breaking your year and your goals down into 12-week segments, that change was able to give me a mindset shift that, wait a minute, you have these big goals, but you don't have to do it. You can't accomplish everything all at once. So pick your pick your lane, and for this quarter, work on this, and then break that down into months and weeks. For me, it was a simplifying process, and it helped to get rid of the overwhelm and the mindset that would start to get long about June. Man, I'm really behind. I'm never going to catch up. And then you tell yourself that story, and it's like, well, okay, I've already missed the first 6 months of the year. But I think you have to first become aware of the stories you're telling yourself. And growing up, I didn't really know that. And I'm big on telling my children too. You are not defined by these stories you've told yourself. You can change your story. You can do that at any moment and tell yourself a new story. But I believe that you first have to believe in yourself. But I think you have to dream bigger dreams. If you're living inside your comfort zone, you're not going anywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where we can slump when we are in our comfort zone.
Hmm.
So in terms of stretching your comfort zone, how do you do that?
Oh, I say yes to everything, and I figure it out on the way. It's kind of like, what is the book where you jump out of a plane without hope your parachute will open? But I I think when I look back on things that I've overcome, like one huge thing for me was public speaking. I was the severe introvert who would literally think they were going to get they would they couldn't do it. They just couldn't do it. They would get sick. So I started to tell myself, and again, I didn't really realize at the time what I was doing, but I started to tell myself a different story. So I started with small groups, and instead of saying you're going to speak to a small group, I'm going to have a conversation. I'm going to have a chat with this small group. So it began, when I look back on it, it began with that mindset shift. And before I knew it, fast forward, 10 or 15 years later, and I was walking up on a stage and there were 450 people in the room. Now, I'm still not a from the stage speaker. I'm still just having a conversation with Nina or the people in the audience. So That's what I want everybody to take away from this. I just told myself a different story. I was just simply having a conversation. And one day I looked up and it was just no longer hard, but it was hard till it wasn't hard. That's the thing.
And it's interesting because you said you told yourself a different story, but before you could tell yourself a different story, you had to make a decision that you wanted to change, because otherwise you
Mhm,
could have said, oh, actually, public speaking is not for me. Other people can do
mhm,
it, but I'm just going to say no. But
mhm,
you had to make that decision that actually I can change my story in order to do this new
mhm.
activity. So, how do you make that decision that yes, you are going to make a change in your thinking? You're going to do it intentionally.
I think for me, it was some of us are, we tend to be overachievers. And for me, I knew that it was always going to hold me back. And I actually looked back in my early years, my 20s and 30s, at missed opportunities, at things where I didn't take a chance, where I said no, where I should have said, what's the worst thing that can happen? What, and usually you're not going to die. Usually you might be really uncomfortable, but in most cases, you're not going to die. So I think it's simply putting one foot in front of the other. And first of all, you commit to making the small changes, whatever they are. And once you've successfully made those small changes, then you get a different mindset and you begin to think differently. And for me, I think it was a process that just evolved over time. But you're right; it starts with that first time you say yes to something you have previously said no to, and you just say, "I'm just going to do it. I'm going to force myself to do it." And then you look up one day, and it's funny. You're no longer an introvert. That's one thing that happens. I mean, your personality almost changes because you become somebody who says yes to things.
And that is a huge consequence, isn't it, of having that
Huge,
thinking.
huge.
And it's interesting what you said. You say yes to something and then you figure out how you're going to do it. And I'm very
Mhm,
much the same. I'll
mhm,
take on a challenge and I think, okay, I'll find a way to do this.
mhm,
And this is something that can feel very scary because, when there's something new, we don't know what's going to be on the other
mhm,
side of it. We have no idea. So we're taking a leap of
mhm,
faith by saying, okay, I'm going to do it. And, if it works out, great. There may be some mistakes along the way, but I will learn. I'll be in a different place
mhm,
after I've taken this new action, because we don't go back to where we are. We're suddenly in a new place of thinking, aren't we? As you
yes,
said, you stopped being an introvert, became an extrovert just by
mhm,
taking action.
mhm.
So, in terms of figuring it out, we do have our resources, don't we? And I think that's something that we forget. We do have the capacity to figure it out.
Mhm. It's Google. It's called Google. It's something that I didn't have in my first business. There is nothing you can't figure out. When I started my podcast, that was before podcasts were really a big thing. I just said, I'm going to do it. And I figured it out. Some of the things I did wrong, then I changed them. But I am kind of that person that today, now I was not that person a long time ago, but I will say this, your things, when you do things outside your comfort zone, one builds on the other and you become a different person. But you have to first start by saying yes, and being a little bit terrified some of the time, because what if I agree to do this and go on Nina's show and it doesn't work out, or I say the wrong thing or whatever. You just have to put that aside and just show up. Do the pre-work. I believe in being prepared. I think that's a big part of getting over the fear of things, is preparing. And then you just have to take a chance. You have to take a chance.
And have there been times where you thought, no, I'm not going to do that? That just seems too difficult and I'm not prepared to stretch that far.
Hmm. Yes, the first time I was asked to speak at a large event in Chicago, I just thought, I can't do this. I don't. What if I get up there and the PowerPoint doesn't work for my? Because I'm in preparation. I would always do. Uh, I like the security of knowing, having an outline or something. So I told myself this story. What if this goes wrong? What if? What if? What if? I had a whole list of what ifs. And then I finally just said, no, you can do this. It's just a conversation. And once I did it, the funny thing was this, that when I was standing on the stage, it was like I was in two parallel universes. One is, I can't believe I'm actually up here. And one was, I was up there doing what I was supposed to do. And the thing is, once you do it once, then you know that you just burst your whole story that you told yourself before. It becomes easier.
It is about making peace with the very worst thing that can happen.
Yeah,
And
yes.
we will survive. The sky's not going to fall in. It's going to be okay. And we may make a bit of a fool of ourselves, but it's
Yes.
okay. And I can think of instances where I've been on camera, something has gone wrong. My husband's been crossing the room behind me. And, but we still use the footage because it's real life, isn't it? And actually, people don't want everyone to be perfect all the time. They want to see their flaws. And when they make mistakes, it makes us more real. You said something really interesting. You said that when you decided that you were going to do public speaking, you took small steps.
Mhm.
Now, can you talk more about that? Because I'm a big believer in taking small steps rather than thinking, I'm going to do this whole big project in one go. It just feels too big. And about breaking things down.
Yes. So taking small steps for me, one of the things that I did was I agreed to speak to a small group at my real estate investing group. It was just a small room of 10 or 15 people about a topic I knew well. Once again, I had to tell myself, this is just a conversation. I started the podcast, which, boy, you worry then, and at least I did. What if I just make a fool of myself? What if I don't sound good? Nobody likes the way they sound, for sure. But I did small things. And along the way, I had a couple of small events, local things. Then I did an event with, if you're afraid to do like events, find a partner. Do a small event where you have 20 people in the room and you teach them what you know. And it just builds little by little by little your confidence. And one day, when somebody asks you to do something big, you're able to say yes.
Yeah, I like that way of doing things very much. Rather than thinking you have to do the big leap, you can just use small stepping stones and the confidence grows. So how do you cope, Sharon, when something doesn't go according to plan, when you have a setback? How do you pick yourself back up and keep going?
Well, it's in COVID. That's an interesting question. It's I think I heard John Maxwell say you have to have your nervous breakdown and your pity party and get over it really quickly. I think you're entitled to that. If you do something, it doesn't go well. Things happen. Let's face it, things happen, and you feel bad. You have your little pity party, and then it's like getting back up and getting back on the bike. You must get back up and get right back at it. Otherwise, you let that incident define yourself. So and I will often maybe just break the cycle of the negative thinking. I'll pick up a book or I'll do the unthinkable and I'll put on a YouTube video. Uh, I think about breaking that pattern of negativity, go for a walk or do something to change that thought process and then come back and get at it again pretty soon. Because you know yourself, your stories that you tell yourself, they get bigger. This little tiny thing, all of a sudden, is this giant mountain if you let it go, and you can't do that. You have to face it.
Yeah, it's like when you wake up in the middle of the night and suddenly that thing seems so huge. And then you wake up in the morning and think, well, why was I worrying about that? I can easily deal with that today.
I know.
It just feels a big thing sometimes.
Yes.
And it seems that you have very, very good awareness, self-awareness about your thinking.
Well, I will tell you, I didn't always have that. And so about 20 years ago, I had a long-term problem with insomnia. I couldn't shut it off. It was like this loop that went all the time, the thinking loop. And so I went to a formal meditation group. And when I say that changed my life, it really did, because it taught me how to get out of my own head, how to be able to sit with myself. I know this gets a little woo-woo for people, but it was, for me, I truly think it saved my life when I knew a couple of years down the road that I didn't have to try to fall asleep in a chair with the TV on. I could actually go to bed and go to sleep. It was huge. But for me, it was a big thing, because when something was weighing on me, and you can call it whatever you want to call it. You can call it, if you go back to thinking, I think it's some of the early books where, who was it said they were sitting for answers in the book? Maybe Think and Grow Rich. He talks about sitting for answers, and it hit me one day. That man was going into a quiet room and meditating, sitting for answers, like 100 years ago. But it taught me to rein in my mind. And when you do that, you can rein in your stories. You can see things more clearly, and that, for some people, I know a person who goes out and walks in nature and achieves the same result. Maybe it's prayer, maybe it's whatever. But for me, the being able to finally get some control over my mind, that's what I create. That's what did it for me.
And can you share the details of your meditation practice? How often you do it? If you do it daily?
I aim to do it daily, and that's actually back on my list again, because for me, once I do it, I actually thoroughly enjoy it. So I put on some music and just sit quietly, and you kind of drift. But I'll usually seed my meditation with, I'm trying to figure out this problem, or I'd like a solution to this, and then I just sit there. 5 or 10 minutes of is enough. And if I have a really bad day, or really a day that's maybe not going so well, I will stop in the middle of the day and just do 10 minutes or something, 15 minutes. But in reality, I have the opposite problem. I get so calmed by it that I have to set a timer so that I just not drift off into wherever. But for me, it's a very calming thing. It helps me collect my thoughts. So what I intend to do every day, and some days I get up and start working, and that's not what you should do. You should take even 10 minutes, and you should have your morning routine. You should do some sort of a grounding exercise, and it makes the whole day go better. So I've been kind of hard on myself recently, because I've been deep in the weeds of work, and there is really nothing more important, though, than taking care of your mind and your mindset.
Oh, yes, I call it the highest level of self-care. And
Yes.
like you, I don't really call it meditation. I call it giving my mind a holiday.
Oh,
And
I love that.
and I take time, about 10 minutes in the middle of the day, when I know I've had a busy morning, or got a busy afternoon, and I know I need to reset myself. Otherwise I won't be so productive, or as my coaching won't be as good if I'm feeling a bit tired. And I just sit there quietly, and I go to a lovely place. Sometimes I'll fall asleep for 10 minutes. Sometimes I'll just be alert but quiet. And again, the morning routine is so important. Yesterday morning, I skipped my morning routine, and I was chasing the day. This today, I had my morning routine, and I feel on top of things. It makes such a huge difference. And it can just take 10 minutes. That's all it is. And everyone has 10 minutes in their day.
Everybody does, and there's a free app you can put on your phone. Now, actually, I pay it about $10 a month for the paid version of Calm, but there is a great free version that you can put on your phone. When I started going to meditation, I had a wonderful lady who is still a friend today. Obviously, we're not going today, but she would do a guided meditation where she would lead you down a path of flowers or whatever, and kind of get you on that path of meditating. Now, I as much as I love that, I no longer actually need that. I can put myself in that state, like you said, just very quickly. But I do believe if you start off your day that way, it makes a huge difference. And if sometimes your days just go awry. You find yourself in a bad mood, which, as you said, for coaching is a terrible place to be, trying to be mischierful when you're actually not in a good mood.
Or your head is too full of stuff.
It's too full of stuff. So if you can take that time and set a timer on your phone, if that's what you need to do, but just completely get out of your head, reset your thoughts, and you will feel calmer. You won't feel this all tensed up, and it's just a miracle. Once you discover it, it's a miracle.
Yes, and it feels harder to skip it as well.
Oh, I know. I don't want to come back.
Exactly, yes. Thank you, Sharon. It's been, I could talk to you forever about this because this is a subject which I absolutely adore talking about. How can our listeners and our viewers find out more about you and the amazing work that you do?
They probably the best way is to come over to the blog. They can contact me from there, and there are links off of there for the podcast. So come over to the Louisville Gals Real Estate blog. Obviously, Nina, we're going back to not knowing what you don't know. We obviously knew nothing about naming things, and um, more than a decade ago. It's such a long name, but the Louisville Gals Real Estate blog, there's a link off of there to the podcast and to free resources and different things available to you.
Wonderful. Thank you for that, for sharing that. And everyone, I would recommend you go there because I've looked at it and it's absolutely fantastic. Thank you, Sharon, so much for being here today. I really, really enjoyed listening to you and to your wisdom as well. And for everyone who's been watching and listening, thank you so much for being here. Till next time. Bye-bye for now.
Thank you, Nina.